It's common. There are some communities that actually have even more. So.
Well, but then like the utilization is not overnight. Like that was kind of an interesting combination.
So, you know, thinking, well, maybe if it was
you could oversubscribe it.
You know, exactly. So,
well, and I thought it was interesting too that somebody said like they need more daily parking. It's too hard. Like if you go later and everything. And I feel like if you go after 10 o'clock, you can park right on Grant for free. Just walk out. You park in the second block of Grant, not the first block. But you know. But like I parked once way down at Spring.
Did you get my notes?
But there were
my
plenty of spots.
I did.
That was like
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. I
That was
think I
before 10
promised
o'clock,
them
so
to you
maybe
last
Yeah,
week. So
And there were plenty.
sorry
of
it took me this long. It
That's
kinda slipped
okay.
my
There's-
mind.
somebody wants to just
I'm just
go
gonna
downtown,
hit
do
the-
something, come right back,
the
that's
high
where
points
I'll park
and-
Right.
across the street.
You know, I think
Yeah. No,
there
when I
was.
go downtown, I usually don't go that way.
I mean, he
Durkin's
addressed
having a hearing tomorrow
another hearing.
in Springfield, I believe. So,
You know, I have one friend that I meet downtown.
yeah.
All right,
We
so
don't
I'm
usually meet till, like,
you
really
might
just
wanna
going
mention
to
it.
open it up
So-
in for discussion. I think the two of us have
you know, I park.
enough comments to
Right.
make. So
Okay.
I'm really
can take
lazy.
your
I
bike.
could walk
Wonderful.
from my
Thank
house.
you.
It's only about a mile. It's more when you get off the train than you're I guess I could ask my daughter to pick me up. I don't mind walking to the train, but then when I come
But
home,
in,
it's like,
but when it's cold.
yeah, do I really feel like walking?
I know.
What did I say?
Yeah, that's why that Jason Van Beverly.
Oh,
But I love some of the
this is the
comments.
new
it's going to be a long meeting.
Oh, but when, she told me not to discuss the budget. Grace did. She said just mention that we considered it, we discussed it, considered it in our committee, and I had all this stuff I was gonna go into about new positions, health insurance.
So we'll get this parking study.
public hearing. I
Well,
read
that's
this, right?
80-something pages in here, so
This was
I
actually,
mean, it's supposed to come out of mine, but I don't need to go into it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You are going to do this presentation.
Yeah, that could be a while.
Yeah.
And then
He sent it to me by mistake. And that's why I'm like reading the whole thing, and I had been at the meeting, and I knew about it, and I was like, wait, I thought Karen would report on this.
I'll make a motion.
If you need my notes.
Although the budgets took most of this. We're not gonna mention it, they'll cut time down considerably.
Is this for?
Yes, they will say that.
Okay.
Well, and right now it's still not.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We all set, Dan? Thank you. Yes, good evening. Welcome to the combined workshop and special meeting of your Board of Trustees on November 12th. Today is the observance of Veterans Day, and so to honor our veterans who have sacrificed so much for the protection of our rights, please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Deputy Clerk Haskey, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen.
Here.
Trustee Hansen.
Here.
Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Sifferman.
Here.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Terrell.
Here.
Thank you. Does a trustee have any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, I do, Madam President. I would like to add an item in my public health and safety report that will discuss Sterigenics and the status of that matter.
Thank you. We'll add that to your section under the workshop portion of the meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Trustee Sifferman. And now we come to the portion of our meeting where we open the meeting up to the public for any comments. Does anyone wish to address the board this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing at 7:01 p.m. We're pretty efficient. And this hearing is concerning the request to vacate the south 20-foot by 187-foot portion of the 52nd Street right-of-way located adjacent to and north of the 5200 Woodland Avenue, Western Springs, Illinois property. Petitioners Shveta Van Beveren and Jason Van Beveren. Deputy Clerk Haskey, will you please acknowledge publication of the public hearing?
Yes, Madam President. The publication was made in the Doings newspaper on October 11th.
Thank you. And I see our petitioners are here this evening. Thank you for attending. Marty, did you want to address the board with any comments? Okay, wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, just very briefly, the petitioners are here.
Yes.
You want to step up? Just introduce yourself to the public and the board.
Jason Van Beverly?
Nice to meet you.
Do you need to use the mic?
No, I think it's,
It's an automatic mic now.
it's global.
What we have tonight is a petition by the petitioners. They're looking to pay $80,410 for basically a 20-foot by 187-foot portion of the 52nd Street right-of-way that's adjacent to the home and the property they purchased. They're going to be doing a remodel or a tear down of the home, and they're going to incorporate that right-of-way that the village is considering vacating into the overall lot structure. The village will retain a couple easements, a public utility easements, stormwater drainage easement, and a storm sewer easement that addresses existing or proposed utility facilities that will be in, portions of that right-of-way. The village engineer worked with the surveyor to get a plat of vacation and easement reservation put together. That's been shared with the petitioners. My office, we looked at it. The easement language is fine. There's a draft ordinance in the packet that was refined with certain updates that we got from the plat of vacation, the new legal description and what have you. So what's in your packet, assuming it gets approved, will be refined a little bit. It's been delivered to the petitioners. They've had an opportunity to look at it. They've seen the plat. The next steps would be questions from the board, questions from the public. If this is something that the board supports, it's teed up to have it voted on later tonight. With your approval later tonight, I'll order a title commitment from Chicago Title. We will basically have a paper closing as we normally do, exchange documents, get documents recorded with the Cook County Recorder of Deeds, and then they will, once they pay, the dollars owed to the village, all of that closing will happen, and they will be the rightful owner of that portion of property, and they'll be able to move forward with their construction project.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
It was just vacant land that we hadn't developed?
Yes, it's part of the vacant land, the rights-of-way that we have under our right-of-way policy that we offer for sale, and we've done this a number of times in the community, and so this is just another one of those areas in town that adjacent property owners have an opportunity to purchase under the policy.
And it is the board's general policy to support the sale of those rights-of-way
sure.
when there's interest from adjacent homeowners.
And the pricing is consistent with the policy. It's $21.50 a square foot, which reflects an existing easement on the property that will be retained. So there's three pricing categories on our policy: $27 a square foot, $21.50 a square foot, and $19.50 a square foot, depending on how many easements or encumbrances are on the property. $27 is a piece of property that has no encumbrances. $21.50, the price point that they're buying at, has one encumbrance, and then for two or more encumbrances, the pricing is $19.50 a square foot.
I wish you the best with your new home. Congratulations. In terms of easements, are we the sidewalk and ComEd? Are any issues with either of those?
No, there's actually two sidewalks out that service this property, one to the north, one closer to their property. They're going to remove the sidewalk closer to their property because they're going to put a driveway in that area, and the sidewalk that is a little further to the north is going to maintain the pedestrian access to the adjacent block to the west, and then to the woodland and to the street in front of their house.
And ComEd's fine too?
I don't believe there's any ComEd issues.
No. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public or the press? Yes. Would you like to come up, please? Thank you.
First of all, I'm Scott Hamilton, 5150 Woodland, Western Springs. I've been a resident of the town for about 56 years. I live across the Park Drive, and I have no objection at all to Jason and his wife 20 feet. The only objection that I have, and I voiced it with Matt on, and the chronology doesn't work, but on September 28th, I talked to Matt. I said, no, I'm fine with, and I spoke with Jason beforehand, and I'm fine with letting him get the 20. Just
Okay.
that in my 33 feet from the sidewalk to the existing driveway, we have a row of pretty nice mature trees. I said, I have no objection so long as you don't take the trees down. Matt orally on September 28th indicated the village would. Matt now on September 21st letter, which was actually after the 28th, I don't know why the date's wrong, he put it in writing. And I will quote, proposed purchase would have no impact on the trees located on the north edge of the right-of-way immediately south of your existing property. For the first time tonight, Jason and his wife showed me the actual ordinance. And the ordinance on page 4 in F says it's the intention of the village to leave in place the existing trees located on the remaining portion of the dedicated 52nd Street right-of-way after the right-of-way parcel is vacated by this ordinance. Those are the trees that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But the village, in its sole discretion, reserves the right to remove some or all those trees at any time for any reason. I would object to the village removing those trees.
Right.
I'm not going to oppose them buying the 20. They should. I'm fine with that. I don't want the trees removed.
That's understandable. I believe that's general language that if the tree is diseased or if there's an issue with the health of a tree, that,
Put that in there, that'd be
okay. Mike?
Are the trees on village property? Yes, I would not change the language, that, the trees are an asset to the community, but again, this is village property. That property may be sold at some point in time to an adjacent property. It could be Mr. Hamilton or his successor in interest. It could be, the folks here, the petitioners, the barons here. The language is there, because it's a village right away, and that those trees are an asset of the village. I would leave the village with the flexibility to make a decision that's in the best interest of the community.
Well, then if the village is going to go back against the letter that they sent to me, and you're welcome to have a copy, that I relied on up till now, I would like to know that.
I'm sure there is
That
no
qualification
intent
was not
to
in
take
this
down.
Yeah,
at all. You're welcome to have a copy.
yeah, I can get a copy from staff, yeah.
As you said, Mike, I think that's just general language that you put in there. We have no intention at this point, but if they do become diseased, then we do have to do something.
Absolutely. I have no objection. If they become diseased, take them down.
Well, I mean,
Write
they
it
could be
down.
diseased,
Write it down in the
it could be
ordinance.
a governmental purpose, it could be the sale and the development of that land, so I don't know that the village would want
Well,
to,
then I would have another opportunity under the right-of-way ordinance, which I have studied. At that point in time, if Jason and his wife want to go farther, I would then have another opportunity to be heard.
oh,
I
absolutely.
don't want to
That's
waive
right.
that right.
You wouldn't, and actually,
No, no, no,
you,
hold on.
okay.
I don't want to waive the ability to challenge cutting down those trees at that time by not raising the point now, which is in fact, as a lawyer, I believe would be the case.
Well, I mean, you're an adjacent property. You have an opportunity to buy that land and protect those trees if you want to protect those trees and have 100% certainty in that regard. And we've had this conversation, I think, before, a couple of years ago, when somebody else,
That somebody else went over 33 feet, as I understand the ordinance, then I could stop and block over the 33 feet. This is not over 33 feet, this is 20 feet. And I don't want to stop
Right.
them. All I want is to keep my trees.
But they're not your trees, they're village trees, and they're on village land.
Yeah.
And-
We've taken care of that land for 54 years, so, yeah, we got it.
Well,
I would just submit to the village trustees that I don't think it would be detrimental to the village if, in this exact ordinance, you put in disease or other dangerous situation, take them down. But not just to hold me hostage and waive my right to challenge at a future time. If they want to go beyond the 33-foot dividing line, I don't want to have, your able attorney come back and say, wait a second, Mr. Hamilton has waived his right to raise that issue at the time of the next grant of easement. I
Well-
want that to be the legal record that I would have to face then, because you would probably say, you waived the right, Mr. Hamilton, at this moment in time.
He doesn't waive that
No.
on their property.
That's what I was going
What
to
did-
say. If anyone came back to purchase additional property, we would go through this process again.
Correct.
Right.
But at that point in time, if people want to cut down those trees, I want the trees to be there for me to buy.
well,
Well-
and we did have this conversation a couple of years ago, and you were, offered the opportunity to buy that land.
Well, the difference then, though, that homeowner wanted to buy 40-plus feet, not the 20. I don't want to block them to go to 33. I just want to keep the trees.
And again, I mean, the last transaction we had with Mr. Hamilton, he was trying to put conditions on the sale of village land to a private property owner. That was an issue we had to deal with, because you didn't have any
And
control to
we
do that.
agreed, and I pulled that off the table, as
Correct.
you recall.
Yes, you did, and what I'm saying is, these are public trees on public land. If you want the certainty that those trees will always be there, you have the opportunity to buy 10, 15, 20 feet of that right-of-way to preserve that land and to preserve those trees. And that would be your certainty.
I understand your position.
Yep. But you wouldn't be waiving anything. The next buyer that comes along, you'll have an opportunity to speak.
So, assuming the trees are still there. Because they can be taken down under your language without notice to me for any reason.
Just like any other public
Exactly.
tree on
That's my
public
point.
land.
That's
Yes,
my point.
yes.
Yes. So I can tell you with certainty, it is not our intent to take down those trees unless we have to for a reason that we don't foresee tonight. There's no intent. But to our attorney's point, I understand that it doesn't make sense for us to hamstring our ability in the future on land that we own to take down those trees if necessary. I can tell you that is not our intent. It would never be our intent. We love trees. We're residents of a Tree City, USA, and we would never needlessly take down a tree. Mr. Hamilton. So thank you for your comments. Your rights are preserved going forward. This will not limit your rights tonight. But I appreciate your comments and your attending the meeting.
Sure.
Anything further? Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Public or press? Any further discussion by the board? In that case, they'll close the public hearing at this time. Thank you for your attendance and
Thank you.
participation.
Thank you. I'll be in touch.
We'll be voting on that later on this evening. Moving on to our second item, we have the downtown parking study and related signage plan. We have a presentation here, Marty, or Jim. Did you-
Right, I will defer the presentation to Marty and his witnesses' expertise.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Trustee Zero. Tonight we have, we talked about for quite a while, our downtown parking study. Background information we provided in the packet, includes some history about the study. You've seen this information before, and it was kind of in bits and pieces over the past year, but it was certainly process for downtown to ensure that the future aspects of streetscape, which is a big priority for the village board, are looked at and are in concert with both what we have in our downtown plan and also our downtown refinement plan created by Benison Associates and JJR. So with that, I talked about in the memo a little bit about how future parking issues are always going to continue to evolve and be evaluated by a number of departments at the staff level like we have in the past year or two. And this plan will create a good guide for us going forward, a comprehensive guide to think about parking as we do those streetscape improvements over the next 10 to 15 years, not 10 to 15 years, 5 to 10 years, let's say. And then as we address issues that pop up from time to time, like how we had to deal with employee parking, for instance, when the platform construction was underway. So with that, Kelly Conley is here with Sam Schwartz Consultants. He's worked quite a bit with us over the length of the study and is going to do a brief PowerPoint and then can answer any questions at the conclusion.
Thank you.
My name is Kelly Connolly with the firm Sam Schwartz. We're transportation engineers and planners. For this study, we had partnered with Tesca Associates, who, as Marty had mentioned, their component was mostly wayfinding and signage. We worked in concert to sort of help feed them content on recommendations for them. So what I'm going to cover is more of the technical parking piece, and Marty was going to talk through a slide or two on the recommendations when it comes to wayfinding.
Thank you.
And my piece of the agenda here, I just want to, I know that my colleagues have been in front of most of you, or at least some of you, presenting existing conditions. So my presentation is maybe 10 minutes and really just focuses on the recommendations that came out of the study. So just recapping the project purpose, it was our intent to provide best practice recommendations when it comes to parking in the downtown. I'll go over the study area, the specific data collection that we went through, identifying the behavioral patterns of parking. So we like to talk about the different user groups for parking. There's commuters, there's customers, there's employees. All of these people have different needs, should be prioritized differently. So our report covers a lot of those users and how we accommodate them differently. And then we did a projection on demand, and so there's not a ton of development information in the next, sort of started about 15 years. We went through sort of how will the parking supply change, and how will the demand on that supply change. So just the background, as I talked about, this best practice. These are the items that sort of guide our principles we need to think through recommendations. A park wants environment. We like to talk about this in downtowns because it's very important that we recognize the downtown as a healthy system when someone's parking and making 2, 3, 4 trips to different destinations and not needing their car. That's sort of what makes downtowns important, is that they're very walkable, and parking is not the dominant land use, it's the realm for the pedestrian. 85% utilization rate, this is a number that we target in saying that a system is used efficiently. This means you're using your asset to the most of its ability by leaving about 15% cushion, we call it, and a lot of that is for circulation, so that you understand it's a bigger study area. So the importance of finding that space is sort of built into that 15%. You don't want people circulating to find that very last spot in the study area, so we cap the capacity at about 85% and sort of deem that as an appropriate utilization. So, not 100% is basically the short answer. Again, the shared parking, that's sort of a product of the Park Once environment. You have a pool of parking that everyone is using in a shared manner. So one of the important things in the downtown is to not have off-street parking that is reserved for one user. That makes a very inefficient system because if that one user is not using that spot, it sits empty. Again, I mentioned before, but distributing the parking demand, you have these on-street spaces, you have off-street spaces. In order to best utilize your assets, you want to distribute the demand of parking appropriately so that you are prioritizing your customers and where they want to go. The people that are willing to walk farther, you're letting them walk farther. The people that are willing to pay more, you're requiring them to pay more. So that's the balance of mixture. Parking inventory. This is just touching on the existing conditions piece as a reminder of the data collection that we went through, but we inventoried and built a GIS system for all of the different restrictions and types of both on and off-street parking, and that includes any public facility as well as private, though there's not a ton of public and off-street parking. So in total, about 2,600 parking spaces, both on and off, in the study area, which you can see in the gray, very light gray dashed line. So that includes some residential streets, of course, and it includes a fair amount of parking, as you can see, 10 tracks. Of that, about 2,000 of those spaces are on-street. Utilization survey. We did several surveys. We did a survey on Wednesday, October 12th, and we do those surveys from 9 in the morning until the evening hours to capture the ebbs and flows of the peak demands. We also did it again on a Monday to sort of grasp the changes in days and found that there really wasn't a lot of change over the course of the 2 days, but the peak demand, so demand of all of these spaces, both on and off street, was 34%, and that occurred on the Wednesday at 3 p.m. So that's before people have come back to their cars that have parked for Metra. That's why employees are still at work. Maybe there's a few stragglers having lunch, I don't know, but that's the peak demand out of morning, evening, the whole snapshot of the day.
So that means all of these spots in the gray, 34% were filled?
34% filled, the rest were empty. And that was the peak that we found.
Some of the green, there's parking restrictions though, right?
Oh yeah, yes, exactly. This is a flat, here's a space, and there's someone or no one parked in it. I'll get into sort of the types in just a second.
But can I just ask, this was done 2 years ago.
That's right.
And since then, a gym has opened that I often see a lot of cars parked in front of it. So I'm assuming that the demand has increased?
You know, it's a little hard to say, but I talked to Marty a little bit about that. And what we know with gyms in particular is that their peak demand is occurring in the evening after people are back from work. And we would not likely find a lot of impact at 3 p.m. So it would be after people have come back home from work, maybe a lot of the commuter spaces are already gone, so there's a little bit of a evening out. And so I would expect that the evening demand would increase, but that this peak period at 3 would not be drastically different. You know, and the color coding on the map, as you can see, is the utilization for each of those. We broke it down by block or off-street facility. So the red indicating where it's over 90% filled, the green being less than 50%. A lot of these spaces are Metra. We found Metra spaces to be generally about 75 to 85% filled during these peak hours, peak periods. I think the key though is that when you look at the system overall, and you start thinking through how can we manage the parking assets that exist in the downtown better, there's a lot of capacity that's not being used. You know, may have restrictions on it, which we'll talk a little bit about. But a part of the effort we also wanted to just touch on is that we looked into the future to think through, okay, here's what's happening now, but what happens when we start to add development. So, you know, you can see some increase here. There's a general increase happening with this red line, which is the demand. And those were building in some new development that we had that had come from the downtown plan. What is development coming and what would it do to the parking demands? But the gray line is essentially the supply, again, of the study area as a whole. So not taking into account the idiosyncrasies with, you know, on a block by block level. So jumping into the recommendations, and I'll talk through sort of what is spurring each of these recommendations. I mentioned the user groups. It is very important for communities to prioritize, as you know, your customer base of parking. So we had identified some general areas of where it was important to be prioritizing customer parking over some other user groups in parking. So most of this already is 2-hour customer parking. There's a few locations that are currently Metra, that if as demand increases, that would be an area to look at to flip over to a time-restricted parking in order to provide more customer parking if it's needed.
What do you mean by Metra? Metra users?
Metra permit or daily parking.
Okay.
So there's 3 types of Metra parking. There's permit, there's daily, and what else?
Employees or Metra employees or?
No. There's a
short-term, maybe, short-term?
That would be daily.
Yeah, that's daily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what is it? Oh, it's Metra, yeah, it's Metra Reserve, so there's an actual space number attached to it.
Oh, okay.
So that particular permit is assigned
To Metra.
to
And that's
that
what's at 800 Hillgrove,
permit holder.
right?
Oh,
Marty?
the parking
That's what's
lot.
at 800 Hillgrove?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
parking.
the other being Metra Meter.
Okay.
And then Metra General permit, where you have a permit, but you're not assigned a specific spot.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the prioritization, like I said, of customers, because that's a higher turnover. You want the higher turnover, great. Restructure employee credit program to distribute demand. These were areas, so, you know, some of the things that we had found when we looked through the Metra permit program that the village runs, I'm at employee, I'm sorry. So, in our utilization studies, we looked at the types of people that are parking and using the streets. There's 177 employee permit hang tags that have been issued that are currently out in the world, and we only saw 17 being utilized. And so one of the keys with understanding how employees are using the system is understanding how many employees have these permits. So people are holding on, the employees are holding on to these permits, whether or not they're still employees in town, whether they've moved on. But one of the ways to sort of reset the clock would be to set an expiration date on the existing permits that are out there, sort of hit reset, have people come back in and reapply, and by setting an expiration, they're going to have to continue to reapply so that you know how many employee permits the village has issued.
So do that like annually then?
Annually,
Okay.
exactly.
And then are they restricted in where they can park, the employees, with
Yes.
their permits? Okay.
Yes, they are. So, any of the, when you see the grounds in this area,
Mm-hmm.
so we have identified the off-the-street lots here, and as well as the on-street spaces where they're allowed to park if there is, they're not reserved, but
Right.
if there's a space there, they can.
Okay. Thank you.
So the second part of this was just making sure we identified where, if in the future, more employee parking is needed, the areas that we've identified where you could look to expand on employee parking. You know, it doesn't seem to be an issue at all currently, something to think about in the future as demand, as demand is makes it necessary. So this is the daily employee permanent parking that you may be able to expand on. Again, I mentioned the user groups and, you know, the needs. Industry standard is generally that employees are willing to walk and should be required to walk a little farther than customers because they do it every day. They're familiar with the system. They have identified, I know I need to drive here and park here, and are more willing to do it than a customer who would have to walk 2 to 3 blocks. So you want to push your employees more to the outskirts of the downtown area.
And how
which is
would, sorry, excuse me.
Sure.
How would those be, what would the signage be like? I see that going into neighborhoods where there's not currently that sort of parking, and what kind of hours would that, how would that be monitored?
Well, you currently have employee parking on the street up by the school. Sorry, I'm going on. So I would recommend that it's similar signage to what you have currently. A lot of communities will issue a permit type with being employee, and they post it as employee parking allowed 8 to 5, 9 to 5, or whatever those general hours would be.
So right now, they're 4 hours and 2 hours, but we'd be changing that for, it'd be 8, 9 hours.
Yes.
What about the residents that live there? I mean, they're gonna be seeing cars parked in front of their homes all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it would be additional parking demand on the streets. But, you know, generally speaking, it's a parking asset that you want to utilize. Instead of, for example, building a garage, if that were the trade-off, spending $30,000 to $50,000 per space, you could be utilizing the on-street parking a little more efficiently. Again, these are just things to consider as demand mandates. You currently have a parking demand of 34%. This would be once you reach that 85% threshold that it becomes an issue.
Right. Does that also factoring in on Grand Avenue, for example, that is one of the streets that is a crossing over the train tracks, so it tends to back up quite a bit. So I'm looking at the kind of the Zone 2 area there, I guess, that street which is Grand. So it gets backed up quite a bit. It gets
This
pretty.
one you're talking?
Yeah.
That's not Grand.
Oh, sorry.
Is that lawn?
Yeah, that's, no, lawn, Grand, what's the next one? Woodland Central. So
Oh.
this is Woodland.
Oh, I'm
this is
sorry.
Central.
Okay.
We did not include Grand,
I see.
probably.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that reorientation. Okay.
Sorry, the street names are not.
No, my mistake. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm on the Metra, which I thought I was on earlier. So Metra commuters, one of the recommendations that came out of this study was that you have a system, and actually a lot of your neighbors have the exact same thing on the BNSF. Metra parking is $3 per day. So to provide more options for those Metra people, because they will pay more. So one of the ideas was this area we highlighted in red, which is directly in front of the Metra station. Granted, it's across also from businesses, but there's been some success on more progressive parking communities where they will double or triple, quadruple parking prices for a very in-demand area, and be able to reap the benefits of that increased revenue, because there is a sector, albeit a small sector, that would be willing to pay that. So if that was something that the village would be interested in from a revenue perspective, these are extremely high demand spaces for Metra people, because it's directly in front of the station. So, like, for example, me, I have 3 kids, I need to make a train. I, some days, would be willing to pay $10 for a parking spot, because my choice is making a train or not making a train. So it's that user group, that very 1% user group. If you adjust the pricing, you can effectively even out the different demands.
You know, one issue with those, though, I mean, not to, you certainly have a great idea. That's where a lot of people get dropped off when they get the train. So every day I see people pulling in there and dropping people off. If people are parked already, then people are getting out in the middle of the street.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the other things that we write about in the study is thinking through, as more and more people are getting dropped off and picked up, thinking through in the future as autonomous vehicles are coming, pickup and drop off is becoming ever more important, and having, at least in your mind, planning for the time when pickup and drop off become that switch from parking close to the station versus parking 3 blocks away becomes a non-issue, because your car pulls up and drops you off and then parks itself. So thinking through, as you think through master planning and all of that, thinking about increasing pickup drop-off areas, loading zones, to sort of even out the demand with pickup and drop-off and parking. But I think that's a great point. Maybe those spaces should be 5-minute spaces, or maybe they should be a lay-by and not diagonal spaces, so that there's less maneuvers in and out. You just pull up. That's a great point. So currently the village has a Metro wait list. As of 2016, there was almost 200 people on the wait list. And you know, what we found in this community, as well as several others with similar demographics and station locations within the downtown, is that permit parking is priced cheap enough where people hold on to their permit even if they're not using it. And so while you do oversell by about 20%, you still do have a little bit of cushion in supply versus demand there, where you could increase your, number one, you could increase your permit parking until you have reached that threshold, or thinking about maybe switching out how the program runs, so that maybe it's a lottery, a semi-annual lottery, or an annual lottery where those permits are flipping over instead of having the opportunity for people to hold on for years and not necessarily use the space. Another way around that is increasing the oversell rate until you meet sort of more of a demand for the spaces that you have. So instead of overselling by 20%, maybe you increase that by 5%. Keep monitoring the parking demand, parking utilization that's happening, and adjust accordingly. So this was touching on the shared parking. The village does not currently have, except for one location, a publicly owned off-street parking lot where you can essentially direct your customers to park so that they know that there's always parking in this off-street lot. Maybe the wayfinding is pointing you to a lot, for example. So there were some recommendations in the report about building up these pools of parking to be shared, creating that park once. These are privately owned facilities, at least these are, but it had been discussed in the downtown plan, maybe reorganizing this lot so that it continues all the way through between Wolf and Lawn and makes it almost like a community parking, community shared parking lot.
So that would be
Is that
between
the
Wolf
bank
and
parking lot?
Lawn?
Yeah.
Oh,
The bank
The bank
parking.
parking lot.
Oh,
So
okay.
restriping and modifying that lot to be more efficient.
I see.
Starbucks here.
No,
What's this
No.
one?
so that's Wolf is on the right side, and then Lawn, and, so they're both bank parking lots, and then there's that big empty parking lot behind Concordia. Right.
So this would be the bank.
Yeah. And then the one to the west is the one on the west side of Lawn, correct? That, yes, behind Harris Bank, yes, okay. Oh, it's not? Okay, because that seems underutilized to me. There seems to always be parking spots there. Is there a reason why we didn't target that as well, or? Okay.
It's a little easier when it's there and pretty well organized, and that's pretty efficiently designed.
Mm-hmm.
When we looked at it.
Oh, I see.
And we said sharing, the good thing is that we do quite a bit of sharing there for some employee parking.
Oh.
And for the customer parking.
Right.
Mhm.
You see that in the evening, but there's some cooperation there with their neighboring businesses that help out there.
Oh.
So it's something that's happening, but
Okay.
looking at it as,
Okay.
Yeah, and so part of this was a reaction to, at least talk several years ago about, we are do we not need a parking garage?
Mm.
So this was in an effort to just point out that there is a lot of underutilized parking. And,
Right.
prior to investing $30,000 to $50,000 per space in a garage,
Right.
thinking through how you can do lease arrangements, maybe it's parking in lieu of something else with the private owner in the village, before spending money to build a garage.
Right, well, I think that's great news. I don't think anybody here has the stomach to build a parking garage, so.
Or the
Well,
money.
Yeah, or the money.
I just wanted to touch on this. I mentioned it a little bit, but Metra is a partner with Uber, and there are communities that have, I don't necessarily know the statistics on the successfulness of it, but have worked with Metra and Uber to get discounted parking rates, discounted ride rates, and this is all in an effort to reduce parking demand, and so it would be taking alternative modes to the station instead of driving and parking. I don't think that the village is necessarily at a point where you need to necessarily be investing in that kind of thing, but I think it's also important to note that having these alternative transportation modes, and not just Uber, but that's walking and biking, which 40 to 50% of commuters do,
Mm-hmm.
probably maybe even more customers, is extremely important in the downtown. And in order to, which is also this slide, in order to keep your parking demand down, you have to really prioritize building out your alternative transportation modes, which includes making it extremely walkable, making it safe, connecting the two sides of the tracks so that people are not driving to cross the tracks to get to a business on the other side. And a lot of these recommendations were written prior to the streetscape projects that are nearing completion. So you guys are already doing some of that and have recognized the importance in it.
I
So
heard
just-
that Pace was also partnering. Have you heard that with Uber or
Uber?
Lyft? Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Okay,
I'll have to check on that.
okay,
That wouldn't surprise me.
okay.
Because, you know, in the industry, we call it that last mile connection.
Mhm.
And Pace customers and specifically have that issue where you can get within a mile of your home or your house, but that last mile is the most difficult and often the most harsh conditions for a pedestrian. So in order to work together with the transit agencies and partners like Lyft and Uber to bridge that gap in the last mile.
So our role there would just be to inform our residents of that option. correct?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be.
Mhm.
There are, for example, larger employers that have things like a transportation benefits program
Mm.
where in order to reduce parking demand on their campuses or what have you, they will provide supplemental transportation benefits such as subsidizing people's Uber commutes or
I see.
subsidizing their bike rides and things
Mhm.
like that. And so, you know, just having that in the back of your mind, maybe as you're talking to employees, if,
Mhm.
maybe they, maybe something like the chamber, that would be something that they can inform their members about. You know, the idea that you can manage your employee parking through other ways than just building parking or finding parking and providing free parking.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing was just touching on a couple of the, you know, odds and ends. We looked at enforcement of the parking. That was something that had come up in several of the stakeholder interviews. That there seems to be an increased enforcement in the last, and granted this was a few years ago, but specifically they had called out the Hillgrove lot. So just thinking through the enforcement of the parking and how it's handled in the village, one of the most important things when you have time restrictions is that they're enforced, or else people abuse it and they really don't help with managing the demand. Another recommendation we had was just, as maybe parking becomes more and more of an issue, if it does, having set biannual utilization counts being conducted so that you can record what's happening with parking, you can respond to complaints about parking, and having maybe an annual evaluation of if you changed a block time restriction, how is that impacting the rest of the parking around it, and having answers to the public. And the other thing that we had brought up, which was mostly related to the streetscape project, was just having plans for contractor parking and temporary parking and where are they going when that demand is required. So that concludes what we have. I have some other slides if Marty, you want to talk about it.
So I mentioned earlier that one element of the project was kind of secondary, but important was the streetscape, the wayfinding element that Tesco worked on. You've all seen some of this before. We've talked about the importance of a real community event sign instead of what we typically have out there for events is two street sign poles put by amateurs, well-meaning amateurs, something that's falling over a few days. That upper left sign is one of the ones that is narrowed down to something like that. That would have poster frames in place. And all of these, to step back for a second, I did my own kind of stakeholder interviews with some business owners and some folks that are heavily involved with WISBA, and there are also residents about this kind of grouping or family of wayfinding signs. And overwhelmingly, the response was positive. This was narrowed down from some suggestions that had more of a variety of signs. This narrows it down to kind of a smaller selection, being that we're a smaller downtown. It's not downtown Naperville where there's a variety of signs like this for different parking lots and different size parking lots. maps for the downtown. I don't think we really need a map downtown. You never know though, the kiosk that's shown there is one of the things that could include something that shows you around the downtown, but then also is changeable copy if it's done right, for instance, with a high resolution screen, kind of similar to what they have at Virginia. So that's kind of ideas that we've talked about. So the kiosk and the community event sign are the most elaborate and I think most functional and applicable to everyday life for folks that are walking downtown or visiting. The others start to get into a branding element where the people are either welcomed to town on the outskirts a little bit before you get into town and let you know you're entering Westwood Springs, and there's a certain amount of class that's evolves from that with a logo at the bottom and some nice traditional colors and the black iron poles like we have with our street lights, and then down to more functional like the ones in the bottom right that would tell people obviously how to get to the theater or direct them in, that way or to the pool. We don't have that many destinations in town like that are civic or nonprofit, but a couple that are very important that people typically are asking directions for. So, and that adds to the aesthetic value of downtown. We talked quite a bit about this in the downtown plan several years ago, and then again, hold up the refinement plan, which has really led to some beautiful things downtown, starting with the Tower Green Stairs being rebuilt, and then, of course, the platform project. So this really builds on that, and overall, as you go to the next slide, the idea is to, like I said, build off the tower stairs and add to both the functional and aesthetic quality of downtown at a level that's prescribed in this plan. So.
Marty, when you say outskirts, you mean like at Wolf and Ogden or
Yeah.
55th?
Good question, President Gallagher. Yeah, the idea for the wayfinding was focused obviously more on downtown, but we've talked about like the gateway idea at Ogden and Gilbert, for instance, during the strategic plan. That'd be one of those places where this would be appropriate too, where you could put those signs. We focus more on downtown for this, but and we've got those older signs back from the late 90s that were installed that are the black iron poles on 55th. And we've got one on Ogden. Some of them need some maintenance, obviously, but they've got a white background with the red tower on it. It's kind of a dated looking logo now, or not even a logo, but just a depiction of the tower. Those kinds of locations are important too. And it's not that it's cheap, but it's not extremely expensive to do those kinds of signs. So we would expand this menu of signs out to those locations, hopefully. That's really it in the wayfinding. If there's questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Any questions?
Marty, Kelly, thank you. I thought that was really good. I look forward to the implementation plan, and with the there was quite a couple comments in there about enforcement, so I'd be interested in Chief Budd's input on it, and also the impact with the tollway and what that's going to do with any of our parking impacts as well too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Moving on, we'll move to the workshop portion of our meeting tonight in consideration of agenda items from each committee, starting out with Trustee Allen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Fair warning, this won't be the shortest presentation ever. First item, the 2019 roadway J.J. Bennis Clausen water main. Page 102 in your packet is a memo from Casey dated October 8th. As you may recall, previously, a couple weeks ago, consensus of the board approved $166,000 for design engineering and $211,000 for inspection engineering. Inspection engineering being something relatively new on the roadway program, so a little bit more on that. But what we're being asked tonight to consider is the $26,000 related to the IEPA water main on Clausen. Clausen Avenue is a big component of the 2019 roadway program, and at that time we are going to upgrade their water main from a 4-inch service to the kind of village standard of 8-inch. This, we talked about it at committee. We recommended it going forward to the village board for the omnibus in 2 weeks, right, Casey? So again, it would be approving the 26,000 from the memo, Casey's memo, and then also there's a memo from Jeff kind of relaying some more information on it as well too. Item B, the 2017 water main budget amendment. In your packet also is a memo from Casey dated November 8th, and also a memo from J.J. Bennis. It talks about some change orders. Just to step back a minute, this was the Rose Garden and the Flag Creek water main. It was initially conceived to be in 2017. This is the one, Rose Garden. Well, both projects were awarded to Unique Plumbing. As you may recall, some of the residents went off and did this on their own. And overall, the project was confusing, just to put it very shortly. It bled over an extra year, and that is why we're being, partly the main reason why we're being asked to do a budget amendment. So of the budget amendment, and I believe Trustee Rudolph will talk about it some more, we're being asked to approve a $127,000 amendment. About $21,000 of it is due to the change orders that Casey and Jeff, I think, did a good job documenting. These were kind of typical stuff. They found some valves that weren't working. There was some excessive groundwater, things like that. That was about $21,000 of it. But the biggest portion is really a budgeting issue that it was budgeted in 2017. They thought it would be done near the end of the year. It didn't get finished, and it got neglected to be carried over into the 2018 budget. So it's not an extra expenditure. It's just getting the timing right of getting the budget in. However, it did lead to a long discussion, as Trustee Sifferman can attest to, because our meeting went over a half hour late, about the capital project summary and how those reports are being used. The original intent of those was to kind of identify budget issues and timing issues. And so to staff's credit, they are going to look at trying to revise those going into 2019. I think projects are getting more and more complicated with the IEPA loan money coming in and projects carrying over from year to year. So just a fair warning on that hopefully we'll see some changes to those capital project summaries as well. So were there any questions on that, or that can come in Trustee Rudolph's presentation? Item C is the 2019 roadway referendum update. So the two big projects on that are Clausen, as I mentioned, and also the southern part of Lawn that's not being done this year. These are the concrete replacements. Those are kind of expensive. We can do about half a mile or so per year. Based on our our current budget with the roadway referendum. But you also see about $600,000 or so for resurfacing. These are the asphalt resurfacing. We can get further distance on those. It's lower cost per foot, but it's not the concrete replacement that has the longer expected useful life. The $600,000 or so is actually being funded by our motor fuel tax, which is $350 or so a year. Annually is about the revenue that we get in. So it got bunched in into 2019. So that total then between the two concrete projects, Clausen and Lawn, and the several projects being covered by the motor fuel tax is about $2.3 million. We did, with the water main that I mentioned, we did have a long discussion about the impact to the residents and their water service. So more to come on that, but it is something that is on our radar. It does kind of tie in with the kind of the lead service survey that the water department is running. So we're going to have to work through that one as well. 2019 budget. No surprise, we did spend a lot of time going through this at committee. Fair warning, don't be sticker shock when you see that because the big ticket item is well number 5. That's over $3 million as memory serves. Will largely be incurred in 2019. Again, we are hoping that will be completed by the end of 2019. That might be the very end to be done. And also in the budget, a couple other things worth noting. We put in currently there's 20,000 in there for well number 1 decommissioning. This is the little shed that's over by the corner of Burlington and Wolf Road, that when well number 5 is up and running and fully tested, that we would shut down well number 1. The $20,000 is just for the engineering to figure out how to shut it down, hoping we can get maybe some ways to help get the IEPA to kind of help assist with that. But that's currently in the budget. And also, there's some work that needs to be done with the RO plant. It's been in place, 6-7 years now. So some membranes are at their useful life, and also some pumps. These are the above ground pumps that send it out to the water towers, not the ones that are deep in the well. But those are going to be occurring over a 2 to 3 year cycle to kind of spread out the costs. The impact on water rates is something I think we're planning to discuss, Grace, at a joint Public Works and Finance meeting to kind of go over those. So that was the 2019 budget in 2 minutes. Capital project summary on page 139 in your packet is going through that relatively quickly. First thing, the televising program. I think we're year 4, Casey, out of a 5-year cycle. This is 90, 100,000 a year. It was a mandate pushed on us to do this. It's actually probably been relatively useful. Would you agree that we're finding some preventative maintenance that we're getting ahead of? I don't know about the next cycle. We're doing about 1/5 of the village every year for 5 years, but when we turn over, we'll see. But in any event, that proceeded well this year. The 2018 roadway program, the 2 biggest ones were Johnson and Lawn Avenue right out here. You'll see some of my term, the choking of Lawn Avenue, if you've been down in the business district, how that's being narrowed to make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly. We did talk about this at committee, that while we expect the concrete portion of it to be done this year, some of the landscape improvements will bleed into next year just for the health of kind of the greenery that would be put in there. So both projects are doing pretty well on that.
Barry, can I just?
Yeah, please, go
Are we
ahead.
still on schedule with Lawn Avenue with the concrete casing?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We actually plan to pour the west lane on Wednesday this week, weather permitting. That'll take a few days to cure, but it should be opened up by next week.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 3 in the capital projects was Flat Creek and Rose Garden. This is the one where we had the budget amendment issue. And again, this is Unique Plumbing did both of them. It was 2 separate projects, 1 vendor. We threw in the fact that the residents did some of the work, hired their own contractor to do some of the work. But that's now all finally completed with this approval of the budget amendment would be the final payment. Item number 4, Ridgewood Oaks Basin. This is the long delayed project, is now bleeding into 2019. This would be to improve the water retention coming off of Ridgewood Oaks, which is just off Wolf Road. That really will benefit a lot of the Ridgewood subdivision to kind of control how the water flows in a large storm event. Then there's a series of projects related to the IEPA loan. And one of the things that you'll notice on this is the construction, the engineering, and then costs to kind of manage the IEPA loan. And one of the things that we will ensure is you can see some of the costs have already been incurred to date for some of the consulting work, just so that we get the right budget in 2019 for the work that we'll incur. This is a funded today, receive cash from the IEPA later type deal. So it'll be a significant outlay for us, but then we will get reimbursed, I think about a year later. Is that when the project's complete, Grace? Is that roughly the
No, the
timing?
reimbursement will occur intermittently, but you have to pay the vendors first, and then we submit for reimbursement.
Okay, and as part of the budget, I know you've created a whole debt repayment schedule, so the rest of the trustees will see that as well
Yes.
too. It's a 20-year loan term, 1.8%-ish interest with it, but there's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. So those are all the different IEPA loans. I think that we approved that a few weeks ago, and you can see they're all different types of loan schedules for those. But also then is the standpipe repainting over at South Campus. This is a badly needed project. We're going to do that in 2019. The water tower, or the well tower at Spring Rock, will be a 2020 project that also needs to be repainted. But that's just not the outside. They actually have to drain it. They have to paint, and it's very elaborate, as you can imagine, to make sure all the safety and protocols are being followed. For that, we talked about Flag Creek. And unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. President Gallagher.
Thank you, Trustee Allen. Very thorough. Appreciate it. Moving on to Properties and Rec Committee, Trustee Hansen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. The first item on my agenda is the capital summary report. Basically, the first item is the East Train platform, and the work is substantially completed. Some of the landscaping per the contract will not be completed until the spring, however. And the water has been turned off for the winter, but the lights will remain on. So that project is pretty much finished. The next item in the capital summary report is the Bemis Bike Path, and it is moving along. The work is ongoing, and it's being coordinated with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. Phase 1 plans for that have already been sent to IDOT. So we're moving on. The water tower door will not be a project that will be tackled until 2019, and that's the replacement of the door at the water tower. That will happen in 2019. And the fire station HVAC system was to have started in October, but it is starting, I'm assured, is starting this month, correct, Chief? Okay, so that's moving on. The next item is the 2019 budget. The Properties and Recreation Committee has reviewed the budget for Properties and Recreation, and we do recommend that it be pushed forward. The third item on mine is the right-of-way sale at 5200 Woodland that we discussed in the public meeting prior to this meeting. Well, I guess it was prior to this meeting, but the Schwetta and Jason Van Beveren have requested to purchase 20 by 187 feet property, and we will be voting on that later tonight. So, and the last item that we will also be voting on later tonight is a request, and this is kind of an emergency situation, the water treatment plant heat exchanger replacement request. During the last week of October, the water treatment plant experienced a failure in one of the heat exchangers for the HVAC units on the roof, one of several that circulates air inside the water treatment plant. So staff has requested a quote from Environmental Mechanical Services to replace 2 components of the Trane air unit on the roof. The quote was received on October 30th. Environmental is the firm that holds the contract for the village maintenance of all the facilities. There are 2 quotes for review. Replace the second stage heat exchanger for $9,642 and replace the first stage burner drawer unit for $4,128. This replacement is critical for the water treatment plant, as a portion of it is no longer is not properly receiving heat or circulating air within the village with the unit offline. So the staff is requesting that the board consider waiving the bid process and releasing Environmental Mechanical Services to order this equipment and complete the repairs as soon as possible. The lead time for this is 15 to 20 days. This is an unbudgeted item, so it will be required through the Finance Committee, but we will be voting on it later tonight. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to have temperature control in
Yes,
this facility.
yes. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Hansen. Moving on to Finance, Trustee Rudolph.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Also, several items to bring to your attention this evening, although thank you, Trustee Allen, for taking one of them. So, first, the Finance Committee has reviewed and is recommending that we adopt the 2018 property tax levy in the amount of $8,602,953. That includes the village's levy of just under $7 million, and then the Thomas Ford Memorial Library levy in the amount of $1,609,147. The village levy is about 4% higher than the 2017 levy. The dollars involved there are $265,000, of which about $115,000 would be earmarked for the police pension. The library, of course, is quite a bit higher, is 23% higher, and that includes the debt service of the referendum bonds that were approved in March. Questions about the levy? All right. We'll be recommending that for the omnibus. Second, we do have several budget amendments to bring to your attention and review tonight. As Trustee Allen noted, the first is in the amount of $127,860 and some change for the water main improvements in Rose and Garden. And Trustee Allen, I did not have anything else to add to that, but appreciate the point about the capital projects reports and a way to perhaps improve the budgeting process, in particular when projects get delayed. So thank you for that. Second, we have 4 amendments that are related to the 2018 debt service promissory note. The first debt service payment is due later this month, and to facilitate those payments, the amendments are necessary. So we have transfers to allocate to the capital improvement fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. Specific amounts are in your packet. Third, Director Supert is requesting a budget amendment for $22,750, if you recall, for compliance repairs for the fuel storage tanks located at the Public Works Garage. We approved that contract for the repair on October 8th. Fourth, Director Chury is requesting budget amendments to transfer excess reserves of $400,000 to the Special Purpose Fund. The fiscal 2017 general fund balance exceeds the fiscal 2018 reserve requirement. We still, of course, maintain the required 30% to fund our operations. Any questions on that? All right. And last, also a follow-up then to Trustee Hansen of the critical need with the HVAC, the heat exchanger issue, and we'll have a budget amendment in the amount of $13,770 for that as well. So thank you, Trustee Hansen, for bringing that up. Next, just a quick update on the police pension, just that there will be the next meeting coming up of the Police Pension Board will be in January. And then finally, as with the other reports, the Finance Committee has also been reviewing the 2019 budget, as you might imagine, and spent some time on the general funds, which is largely comprised of our comp and benefits for our village staff. And a draft will be available to the board for the entire budget by the end of this month. And with that, I have no further reports unless there are any other questions.
Director Chury or Trustee Rudolph, I think you guys mentioned there was going to be a sensitivity analysis on the pension plan. Will we see that before the budget docs are finalized?
We have a report for the 7-year report that we can include in the budget packet.
It will be in the budget packet?
We can.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, President Gallagher.
Thank you. Moving on to Public Health and Safety, Trustee Sickerman.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I have a number of matters that come to this body following our October 24th committee meeting. The first is an item that seeks approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an emergency mutual aid agreement for the sharing of police personnel, equipment, and resources that would respond to disasters, civil disorders, and to combat serious criminal activities that constitute a community threat. Attorney Jerusik has provided material for our meeting tonight that lists the agreement for the addition of Willow Springs as another participating municipality under the agreement. Police Chief Buds, along with all police chiefs of the member municipalities, recommends the addition of this village of Willow Springs as a participating municipality, bringing the total to 14 municipalities. So this new intergovernmental agreement needs to be executed very quickly in order to include that additional municipality. And I think that that's going to advance to the omnibus bill
Yes.
at our next meeting. The next item deals with the National Incident Management System training that was conducted on October 10th here in the village, coordinated by Division Chief Gallagher. A total of 34 participants and from four communities, including Western Springs, Hinsdale, Clarendon Hills, and LaGrange, completed the program along with senior staff, public safety personnel, and Village President Gallagher, Village Manager Velkme, Trustee Timick, and Trustee Rudolph.
And Trustee Hansen.
And Trustee Hansen. The NIMS provides a complete template to all that will enable all government, private sector and non-governmental organizations to work together during any domestic incidents. And so this is a very important investment of resources and time that protect our village. The next item that I want to report is the center, the Commission on Professional Credentialing has redesignated our Chief Fire Officer as Chief Kenny. And this designation is valid for the next 3 years. And once again, we're in good hands of Fire Chief Kenny.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, thank you. We appreciate your dedication to your post, and I know this is not your first certification for this honor, and so that speaks to not only your character, but your dedication to the department and to Western Springs, and it reflects highly on the entire village. So thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Our Public Health and Safety Committee also reviewed very closely the budgets that were submitted by Chiefs Kenny and Buds, and we're comfortable and are advancing that for further discussion at a later date.
Thank you.
The last item I wanted to add for tonight's discussion is the issue that presents a significant health concern. It's placed on our committee. The matter involving Sterigenics and the emissions of ethylene oxide that are attributed to that company in Willowbrook. At the initiative taken by President Gallagher convened a special meeting on October the 23rd of various village officials from our neighboring communities and invited the Stop Sterigenics group to attend, along with our local legislators, to discuss the concerns that have been raised at the ground floor level by representatives of Stop Sterigenics. It was a very, very good discussion where we were brought up to speed on efforts that are being taken to stop Sterigenics from emitting these ethylene oxide fumes. And coming out of that meeting, we learned that the Illinois Department of Public Health is committed to studying this. Our legislators have convened an Illinois House Energy and Environmental Committee meeting that occurred later on in October. And also we learned that the Attorney General and the DuPage County State's Attorney has filed a lawsuit seeking to wind down and eliminate the effects of the emissions at Sterigenics. There's a public forum that is being hosted by the United States Environmental Protection Agency later on this month. I don't have the specific date, but our Assemblyman Durkin is taking a lead role in making sure that all efforts are being coordinated to stop the production of these fumes. Our own Aaron Duffy has responded to a request to evaluate and assess any type of emissions into our water systems. And her analysis has certainly produced the assessment that it is highly unlikely that any of these materials could enter our water system. Based on over 33 years of testing, that has not produced any evidence of this substance. And by virtue of the fact that our plane is higher than any, it would be unlikely that any of the water damage would enter our system. So we're on top of that situation. I think a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, President Gallagher, Hodgkins, the mayor of Hodgkins, convened a meeting of local officials, village officials, to address an issue related to a factory and within their village to address this issue, and it proved that there were little or no measurable emissions of ethylene oxide coming out of a plant in Hodgkins. So we're going to still keep our eye on these proceedings in the Public Health and Safety Committee, and we'll continue to report to this body. President Gallagher, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Trustee Sifferman. That was very thorough. Appreciate it. I just wanted to add that the roundtable that I attended was Commissioner Tobolsky's at his invitation. He does wear two hats. He's the mayor of McCook, but also a Cook County Commissioner. And apparently he has this roundtable quarterly for the mayors that are within his district. We are not within his district, but he extended the invitation to us to attend, and I appreciate that and thank him for that. And we will just, as Trustee Sifferman said, we will continue to monitor this issue as things develop. I know our leader, Durkin, has a bill now within the House that he'll have a hearing on that tomorrow that will end, the bill promotes the end of ethylene oxide emissions by 2021, we believe. So
this is the wind down bill?
Yes, the wind down bill. Yeah. Thank you.
So other than that, that completes my report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Sifferman. General Government Trustee Timmick isn't here tonight, so Trustee Terrell, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you, President Gallagher. My report is short by comparison to the others.
Well, thank goodness for that.
First, the refuse and recycling contract extension update. We're going to be seeking an addendum to our contract with Republic Services for the waste collection and removal. You might remember that our contract with Republic Services for waste collection was entered into in November 2015 for a 3-year period. It expires on 12/31/18. While we are determining the village's future waste collection and removal vendor, we need to exercise what's in the contract with Republic, a contractual right to extend our contract with them for the next year while we're deciding what we're going to do. We're proposing a 6-month renewal with a month-to-month thereafter extension until December 31st of 2019. We'll be able to terminate the addendum after the 6-month period with 30-day advance notice to Republic. We think that Republic will want a 1-year contract. They'll tie us down for 1 year rather than the 6-month and month-to-month that we're going to propose, but we, at this point, would like to see consideration of that. The services won't be interrupted in any way. I think that this will be on the omnibus in 2 weeks. This will be on the omnibus?
For a one-year extension.
For the 1 year
For the
extension?
full year,
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not gotten a response back from the garbage vendor. The
Oh.
contract provides for the village to have an option to extend the current agreement 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year at its option. The information I had back was that Allied, the garbage vendor, was not interested in anything less than a 1 year extension. I did send them a 1 year extension, as trustee Terrell indicated, that was a commitment for 6 months, and then it went to a month-to-month for the balance of the 6 months for the full year period. And the one contact, Rich Vandermolen, indicated to me that his superior there was not inclined to go anything less than the 1 year term, which is what the contract we signed with them back in 2015 provided, so.
It might be the 1 year that
It
we'll
may
be putting
be a
in.
one-year
Okay.
addendum, which means a minor tweak to the document that I put out a week ago. But we'll bring you up to speed. We'll have something for action at the
In
next
2 weeks?
meeting
Okay.
because the contract does expire on the 31st of December. We do need to have continuity in your garbage service.
Okay. The second matter I have, this would be B, would be the resolution regarding the temporary easements for well number 5 project for the village. The easements are with School District 101 and the Western Springs Park District. As you might remember from our previous discussions, in order to build well number 5, we need to have a temporary construction access easement for the use of materials and parking and I imagine construction machines. We need a portion of the land owned by the Park District and also by the school board. These are 2 separate parcels. We need a resolution to pay $16,829.37 for the Park District's land, which is on the east side of the project. That's the fair market value for the temporary easement. I believe we're getting the money from the IEAPA loans. We'll also need a similar resolution to provide the school district $3,545.24 for the use of their land. We're hoping to start the project in January of 2019 and expect to have it completed by May or June of 2019. Do we need to put this today? Didn't we have it? Wasn't there a time element with this because of the Park District's meeting?
Both the Park District and the school district are going to be voting on it later in the month, so
Okay.
we're okay to act on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
The timing would be just fine.
Okay. And finally, the last matter I have is the budget report. The General Government Committee has reviewed at length the budget. We've discussed it thoroughly. We will bring it forth in more detail in the December 3rd meeting. And that's all I'd have, President Gallagher.
Thank you, Trustee Terrell. And you're not off the hook yet. Planning and Zoning Committee, any report?
The only report is what we discussed earlier with the lengthy downtown parking study. That's all I'd have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just to clarify one comment on the well number 5, I think you said May or June of 2019. That's in several phases, right? So that's the construction of drilling down in I'm sorry, for the sewer line that's being moved, correct? Not getting the well number 5 in and
I think it was just
transmission.
the easement.
That is the construction of the well, and then, but then we also have to have the water to get to the plant, which will take more time, so.
Additional
But
time.
we'll be
Okay.
able to, once we finish the construction, we can open up the field so that the children can play again.
Right.
And have we gotten any further on what's going to be above ground? I know we had some discussion at that at a prior meeting.
There will be a house.
Yes.
A
Small
utility, a
structure.
small utility
A
house.
house?
That's-
This was a shed.
We each get it for 1 month, you know?
It's a
You want to
timeshare.
move?
Smaller is
It
better.
will not be a house. So it will be probably a shed.
A shed.
That type
They
of-
were- Not a pipe.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that, Trustee Allen. Do we have any idea when the whole project will be done for well number 5 in case it comes about?
Well, Casey is promising us year-end of 2019.
Okay. So
but,
within a
I mean,
calendar year.
That'll be a good,
The entire
it's a good
Okay.
goal. Yeah, we should clarify that's the entire project with the transmission line and hooked up into the RO plant.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, trustee Terrell. Any other business this evening?
Is this,
Nope.
do you want
Now we'll move
Oh,
on.
okay.
So now we'll consider the action item for our special meeting portion of tonight's meeting. Trustee Hansen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I would like to move, please, that we vote on ordinance 18-2935, authorizing the vacation of the south 20-foot by 187-foot long portion of the 52nd Street right-of-way located adjacent to and north of the 5200 Woodland Avenue property located in the Forest Hills subdivision, and approving of a plat of vacation and reservation of public utility easements, a stormwater drainage easement, and a storm sewer easement relating to said right-of-way vacation. Petitioners are Shweta Van Beveren and Jason Van Beveren.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Deputy Clerk Haskey, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph?
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman?
Aye.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Tiro?
Aye.
And President Gallagher.
President does not vote, just
Oh, thank
just
you.
6 trustees on this. And it passes 5
Thank
to
you.
0.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to the next action item, Trustee Hansen again.
Thank you. The motion is to waive the bidding requirements and approve and authorize a contract with Environment Mechanical Services, Inc. of Broadview, Illinois, to replace the second stage heat exchanger in the amount of $9,642, and to replace the first stage burner drawer kit for the makeup air unit in the amount of $4,128 at the water treatment plant. And note that Environmental Mechanical Services is the village's mechanical systems maintenance contractor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? May we have a roll call vote again?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph?
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman?
Aye.
Trustee Timick is absent. Trustee Tiro?
Aye.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Haskey. Moving on to other reports. In my report, I just had a little update of meetings I attended these past 2 weeks. On October 24th, I attended a meeting in North Lake for the Central Council of Mayors. This group meets quarterly. At this meeting, transportation issues are discussed, and there's oversight of projects that have been granted through the STP program that CMAP monitors. The meeting was very poorly attended, in part because the grants are frozen short-term while they transition over to a new scoring method and roll out new guidelines. So hoping the meetings pick up, and I'm sure they will once money starts flowing again. As Trustee Hansen mentioned, the East Platform grand opening was October 26th. I want to thank staff for all of their hard work in making a huge success of the morning. Also thank Trustee Rudolph and Trustee Hansen for attending, as well as our engineer Jeff Ziegler and our attorney Mike Jerusik. Our local state reps also attended, and as well as Congressman Dan Lipinski. So thank you, everyone. I think it was a big success. On October 28th, I attended the Rec Center's first ever pickleball tournament, which was very exciting. It was very well attended and looked like the people were having a lot of fun, and so much so that I signed up for a beginner course. So, yeah. So I encourage everyone to join in. It's actually, I've had 2 lessons now, so I'll beat you, but that's okay. Then on Monday, October 29th, Village Manager Velkme and I met with the president of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, Mariana Sparopoulos. That was a good meeting. We discussed the Central Avenue project and the grant that the MWRD has promised us, and hopefully we'll be getting an IGA soon regarding that. We then met with representatives from D101 and the Park Board regarding Well 5 updates, which Trustee Terrell mentioned. On October 30th, there was a resident meeting for well number 5. All residents on blocks that face Field Park were invited. there are several handouts that were at that meeting, and I brought my handouts here if anybody wants to look at them. These handouts were also mailed then to those same residents after the meeting, which I thought was a nice touch. If residents have any questions or want to keep track of it going forward, there is a dedicated page on our website at wsprings.com/well5. I had a meeting with Mike Fricano in the Central Council Planning Liaison. He is the Central Council Planning Liaison, and Baxter and Woodman, who is the engineering consulting firm that was hired through Western Springs and the lead agency to go around to the regions, the communities within the Central Council region to do that master plan that we have discussed in the past. We discussed what would be happening going forward, and they will now start meeting with towns looking for their big projects and multi-jurisdictional projects. We are also waiting for towns to submit their executed IGAs back to us. I think three or four, Casey?
Actually, 4 have, and I think they're talking about tonight meeting, so.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, during this month of Thanksgiving, we have so much to be grateful for. Our knowledgeable and dedicated professional staff, legal advisor, engineering consultants, everyone who supports the board in the actions that we take. We also have a fine board of trustees here whose knowledge and expertise complement each other, and their disparate backgrounds and experience come together in a common goal to serve the residents of Western Springs and to do what's best for Western Springs and our residents. I'm so thankful that you all continue to serve and donate so much of your free time to village governance. So thank you very much.
Thank you, well put.
Thank you. And
Thank
of course,
you for your services, of course.
Of course.
Same
Thank you.
boat, if not more, 10 times more work done.
Oh, I'm happy to do it.
She's learning pickleball.
That's
And
right.
the pickleball.
And then, of course, we are all thankful for the confidence our residents have placed in us, and that is a burden that we don't take lightly, and continue to honor that. So I wish each of you, staff, board, and all of our residents a very happy Thanksgiving. And that concludes my report. Village Manager Veltman.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Yes, I do have an item.
Good.
I am pleased to announce that LTAC, the Lyons Township Area Communications Center, has completed its search for a new executive director. The new director is Michael O'Connor. Michael is currently the manager of support services for the Libertyville Police Department. Prior to their dispatch consolidation, he was the manager of the Libertyville Dispatch Center. Mr. O'Connor is also an adjunct instructor at Northwestern University for public safety. A detailed press release will be forthcoming this week, and he will begin his duties on December 3rd, 2018. And just on the side, Michael actually also worked at the Village of Western Springs as an auxiliary officer, so he knows this town well.
Oh, great. Excellent.
And that is all. And happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. The LTAC will continue to move forward now and as they consolidate. Thank you. Village Attorney Jerusik.
I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. That's the beginning and end of my report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
In that case, may I have a motion to recess to closed session?
I will make a motion that we recess to closed session
To discuss.
to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Should I keep reading the whole thing?
Yeah.
However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. 5 ILCS 120/2C1. The purchase or lease of real property for the use by the village. 5 ILCS 120/2C5. The setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the village. 5 ILCS 120/6C6. Pending litigation, 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Probable or imminent litigation, 5 ILCS 120/2C11.
Thank you. Is there,
One more probable or imminent?
she
I
said,
heard-
she
I
said
Oh, you
said
did?
that.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Got it.
I'll second.
thank you. Deputy Clerk Haskell, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph?
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman?
Aye.
Trustee Timmick is absent. Trustee Terrell?
Aye.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in recess. We will reconvene the public meeting only for the purpose of then closing the public meeting. No other material information will be discussed at that time. Thank you and good night.